I'm with Diane Shay here in Cornwall, Ontario. Thank you for coming down, Diane.
You're welcome.
You're the first real whistleblower. You've been at this for 5 years now. Can you believe it's been 5 years?
It's been a very long 5 years, yes.
Now, you've been an employee with the City of Cornwall for 21 years now?
Yes.
And in your 16th or 17th year, you ended up in a situation in 2008. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, in 2008, I had a co-worker come to me who was very upset over an incident that had happened at Glenstordon Lodge, an incident of abuse with a resident and an employee. And so that's basically where it started. And I did talk to the supervisor at the time, the manager at Glenstordon Lodge, and about the process and the non-abuse policy, and she was reluctant to agree with my perspective from the legislative point of view, the Ministry of Long-Term Care Act, and so that began a very long, difficult path. That
was Donna DeRoche?
Yes, it was.
All right. Now, normally when someone brings a legitimate concern, as you did to management, they review it, they investigate it. Your situation has taken you on a 5-year journey that seems to have been about everything other than investigating what you brought to the forefront. What was the reaction of Glenstordon Lodge and their management, and then ultimately the city, to you when you brought this case of elder abuse forward?
They basically began to retaliate against me. Basically, there are emails going back and forth between me, Mr. Manon, Mrs. DeRoche, and copy to Mr. Fitzpatrick, who was in charge of the whistleblower policy at the time, and which I invoked it almost immediately.
Now, Ms. DeRoche is of course gone. She was given a settlement. She's been on the Sunshine List. Yes. Mr. Fitzpatrick was given a settlement and allowed to go off into retirement. Mr. Manon was given 2 years' salary, about $300,000.
Yes.
You, on the other hand, have had a very bumpy ride.
Yes, I'm currently on long-term disability. I'm taking a 33% reduction in my income as a result of that, plus all the psychological and physical impact that this situation has had on my life.
So how did everybody react to you when you brought forward this? You talked about retaliation. I think at one point you were also let go by the city.
In 2009, I was terminated from my position in human resources, and I had to hire a lawyer to become reinstated again.
Which you successfully did.
Which I successfully did, yes.
Did you get to recover all of your legal fees?
No.
So you had to pay a price for that?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Whatever happened to the actual case that sparked this, to the individual that alleged to have done the elder abuse in the situation there? Was it ever resolved?
The Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care did come in. They did place charges against the City of Cornwall in December of 2010, and of course that went to court in October 2011, and the city pled guilty based on the facts of the case because they were guilty, not because they were trying to save taxpayers.
No, in that case, was that a patient-to-patient issue, or was it staff-to-patient?
It was staff-to-patient.
So whatever happened to the staff member?
There was discipline.
Okay.
But discipline is at the discretion of the employer.
Is that staff member still at Glenstordon Lodge, to your knowledge?
Yes, he is, to my knowledge.
Yet you have suffered immensely. Your family suffered. I think it even impacted your sister's employment at the lodge as well?
Yes.
She was a physiotherapist?
She was a physio assistant. She wasn't technically employed by the lodge. She was employed by a contract physiotherapist and worked for him under the contract.
And what happened to her?
She was asked to leave in August of 2008 during this, whilst this issue was going on between me and Mr. Manon, Mr. DeRoche, and Mr. Fitzpatrick. And she was asked to leave, although she was not fired from her job. The physiotherapist was more than willing and did offer her exactly the same job in another facility. She was told by the physiotherapist that it was a direction from Donna DeRoche to have her removed from the facility.
So it had nothing to do with the quality of her work?
Definitely not.
It was just sort of hardball?
From what I could see, yes.
What was the reaction of your staff members, the people you worked with, your coworkers, when this was going on back in 08 and 09? And
initially, they were all very supportive because actually it was a coworker of mine who brought this issue to me who was very upset when she read the documentation on the issue and had already gone to Mr. Minot before she spoke to me. And so they were all very supportive.
Why do you think, in your opinion, did this management group, these three people who are no longer with the city, retaliate against you or cause you this distress instead of simply addressing the issue?
I've thought about that for many years, and I've had many years to think about it. But the only answer I've ever come up with is that their ego. It was an ego thing, and they didn't want to admit that they were wrong.
Now, in any big company or organization, there's a chain of command. Who was in charge of whistleblowing during this whole period for the city of Cornwall?
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
And in documents, in your court case, you allege that there was a relationship, or your lawyer alleges there's a relationship between Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. DeRoche.
Well, there was a great deal of gossip over the previous years by many individuals that there was a relationship, and I was concerned that this may have been true. So, which is immediately why, when it started, fear is a great motivator, and that's when I made sure I kept nurses' note. I sent emails. I talked to the ministry. I did everything I could to protect myself, since I am not part of a union. I'm non-union, and I do not have anyone to defend me. And
of course, the chain of command after the CAO is the mayor and council.
Yes.
Where the mayor, in his own statements, has referred to Mr. Fitzpatrick as his good friend.
Yes.
Which is, of course, beyond the role of a CAO and a mayor. Yes. So you didn't even have anyone to really turn to at that level.
Throughout the entire process, I was in between a rock and a hard place, yes. Other than to get a lawyer and keep a lawyer on retainer the entire time, that's the only way I could defend myself.
And roughly over these 5 years, how much do you estimate you've spent on legal bills?
Total cost of legal bills would be over $100,000. But I do want the public and everyone to know that Registered Nursing Association of Ontario, RNAO, who I belonged to then and still belong to, did pay for a great portion of my legal fees up to the date of the court case, which was October 2011, and I thank them. They supported me 100% financially, emotionally. They were always there. They never, ever doubted me.
It's still a devastatingly large amount.
It is, very, and I still owe a great deal of money related to this case, yes.
Now, do you still have litigation ongoing with the city?
I am considering to continue litigation because I do feel that they do have to treat me as treat me the same way they have treated Mr. Fitzpatrick, Mrs. DeRoche, and Mr. Minot, and that their legal fees were paid, and I want my legal fees paid, and I want RNAO paid. I don't believe the nurses who belong to RNAO should be responsible to take the financial burden related to this issue.
This past year, I believe it was former Councillor O'Shaughnessy that actually stood up and apologized to you.
Yes.
Have any politicians publicly ever said anything to you similar nature?
No one has apologized to me, although Mark McDonald has been supportive. He he was at 2 previous court dates and did say that he supported me.
How do you, I mean, I'm sure over the last 5 years you've gone through the whole gamut of emotions connected to this, but I mean, did you ever think when this started that this kind of experience would occur over a 5-year period?
I actually, if this hadn't happened to me, I don't think I could believe that this could ever happen in Canada.
Do you think that this is a Cornwall issue, or is it just an example of a few individuals? Or there has to be a collusionary type situation for this kind of stuff to go on in a city this size.
I really can't speak for, Canada or, worldwide or anything, but It definitely is a culture that has developed over the years, and it may be just related to these individuals. I don't know.
Have you ever thought about just giving up and moving to another city and continuing on?
My husband still works in Mooresburg, and I actually don't live in Cornwall. I live in Ingleside,
Okay.
Because that is an equal commute for both of us. We've only been married 7 years, so this started in our second year of marriage. So he's had a lot to deal with.